YouTube, what it do? It's your guy CJ back with another video, back with another episode of the CJ Wilkins YouTube channel. So man, somebody that jumped in my DMs, bro. It was a woman, and she had something to say about my content overall. She's a long time subscriber, and she's a fan of most of my videos, but she's very much so aware that I make, content for men. And she was like, man, CJ, why do you always make content talking about, women are hoes and, women are this and girls are that, and you never really talk about, she said, I never really talk about the good women, and I could have swore that I do talk about the good women, but, who am I to argue with a person who's coming from an objective standpoint, Overall, she was like, I like your message and what you try to teach men, but I do want you to try to make some content or give some balance to women, right? So I'm going to go ahead and make this episode, bro, about the good women, right? And I do have to give a disclaimer, right? Because I promise you, like, when I make my content about, the women in the dating market and what young men, have to pick from in today's time, right? I always say not all, right? Well, not always, but anyway, let's go ahead and get into it, man. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also to my podcast, the Be a Man podcast, and also the CJ Wilkins YouTube channel, right? So let me start off by saying that I really empathize with women, right, in today's time, especially the good women. Now, you bust downs and you run throughs and you Jezebels. I don't really have too much empathy for y'all because y'all kind of do it to yourselves, but there are a lot of great women out there, and I really shouldn't have to say this. It goes without saying, you know what I'm saying? But I'm going to go ahead and say it. She called me out. I'm not going to say your name, but, you called me out, and I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and, give y'all some love here, man. There's a lot of great women in this world, right? And, good women. When I say good women, right, what I'm talking about is, just regular, everyday, hardworking, loyal, God-fearing even, but you don't have to be a God-fearing woman to be a good woman, but, if we're going to speak from, a position of, what guys, quote-unquote, want in a woman, right? What guys want in a wife. If you ask, most, decent to good men, they're going to want a woman who has some level of virtue to her, right? So if you talk about a virtuous woman, right, normally there's some type of biblical component to it, but you can ascertain that overall this is a woman of good moral standing. She has good qualities about her, good principles and everything. So that's the type of woman I'm talking about when I say a good woman, right? She stays out of the way. She's just a woman of high moral fiber. She got some really good character to her. And she's not a woman who's out here doing whole shit. She's not out here always in the nightclubs, smoking and drinking sailors, and she'll never walk into a venue and 5 or 6 guys in there have already smashed. This is the type of woman who, she has a high, I'm not gonna say high, but she has a medium to high level of respect for herself, right? She carries herself in a very classy way. She has a great disposition about, the image that she chooses to present to the world, And that's the type of woman, right, that good men, solid men, righteous men are looking for, right? But I do want to say this too, right? So I done gave y'all the credit. Be sure to record that. Make sure I don't get no pushback saying I ain't never showed good women love, because I think I do a lot better. Hey, if I don't, there you go. But let me say this too, man. I always operate from the standpoint of if the shoe doesn't fit, then, don't wear it, right? But we do have to be honest, right, when we talk about this, right? Because in today's society, right, if you look at the media, if you look at, entertainment or whatever, in the music, harlotry is in style. And I'm going to give y'all a hint. I'm going to give y'all a clue. This isn't a new thing. This is not a new phenomenon. Harlotry being, like a whore, being a buzz down, belonging to the streets, that has been popularized for females, for women for a long time, man. Like, this ain't some new thing to where, like 5 years ago, it was popular for women to be, to have some chastity about themselves and to have some type of, modesty. Like, no, man, it's never been cool for women to be respectable and to be a woman that you can proudly bring home to your family. Like, hey, y'all, this is my wife right here. This is the woman that I'm going to tie myself to and build a legacy with, create a family with, get closer to God with. It's never been cool or glamorized to be that type of woman. So I will empathize further with good women to salute y'all in the sense that, you grew up in a society, a culture, especially the culture. Like, if you're talking about, like, hip-hop culture, man, like, if you grew up, unless you grew up in, like, a nuclear two-parent household family, and you had a father that, showed you love and showed you, how your mother should be respected and how your mom should be taken care of, and, gave that example, right? Unless you came up with that, you was raised by harlotry. You was raised by women who were probably loose, women who were probably not the most feminine, right? You were raised by women who probably were not very good at selecting good men to procreate with and to, like, form unions with, right? So if you're a woman and you're growing up in this modern time to where, like, you didn't see a great husband, a great father, you know what I'm saying, loving on your mom, loving on his wife, you're kind of almost set up in a sense, unless you have, like, a female, like, mentor or like you may have had a mother who was able to, like, give you the game and, not sugarcoat, and raise you in a way that's honorary, teach you all the things about morality and respect and having confidence within self to where you don't have to seek validation from random guys just to feel good about yourself, So a lot of girls, they grew up broken. They were broken, man, and it's unfortunate. It's a sad thing, because you see it so much. And the end result of it is you have women who are literally out here, man, selling themselves, passing themselves around from community to community to circle, So to be a woman who overcame all of that, or was even better, to be a woman in 2025 especially, who sidestep any of that, and you made it to, like, 25, 30 years old, 40 years old. Well, I ain't gonna go that old, but you're an adult and you haven't succumbed to what you perceive a popular woman to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you haven't allowed yourself to become ran through or passed around or sexually promiscuous, and you really have some level of modesty to yourself and who you are, and you're not jumping from God to God to God to God to woman, because sometimes chicks get bored, or they need a break from the penis carousel, so they'll take a break and they'll go with girls for a little bit, But if you've made it to like adulthood, bro, and you haven't just put yourself out there in a way that's demeaning to your character, to who you are as a woman, to people who raised you, man, you are rare. You are incredibly rare, and you need to be saluted. You need to be valued. You need to be appreciated, all right? Because it's pressure, man. It's pressure on the good women, right? Because you got to understand, well, it's not really pressure. And I'll tell you why it's not really pressure. It is pressure in a sense, right? It's pressure in a sense to where, like, if you're a good woman, good women are needed. Good women are actually wanted and desired, right? There are a lot of men who want a good woman, who desire a good woman, who need a good woman, right? But the thing is, two things, right? One, the woman that's promoted in the media or in the mainstream is always going to be the Jezebel. It's going to be the harlot, right? When you watch music videos or you watch movies and stuff, you know, the girl who gets the most attention and admiration, quote unquote, is the whore, right? So if you're young and you're impressionable, right, you will see that and you could internalize that as, man, you know, yeah, maybe if I was like that, I'd be more popular, or maybe if I look this way, or, you know, it's just so much pressure. And that's just the media. Let's talk about social media, right? Social media, you got this facade of how a woman is supposed to look. So now we get into the conversation of, you know, like healthy body image, right? And you got these girls and these young women, they looking at social media, they scrolling down their timeline all day, you know what I'm saying? And they're looking at facades of what quote unquote beauty is supposed to be. And I say quote unquote because it's not real, bro. You looking at girls who got like their airbrushed body, like her abs do not look like that, bro. Like they're straight airbrushed. And you got girls who got the you know the thing, they got the BBLs and stuff, you know? Like, girl, like, everything is like, it's silicone, bro. They got the boob job done, they got the face job done, they got they suck the fat out of their stomach or out of their arms or out of their back, and they add it to other parts they want to look more desirable. So you're scrolling down your timeline. Girls got the filters on. These influencers y'all be following, man, they be posting pics with like 21 filters on one picture, bro. One pic got like 30 filters. And you're comparing how you look for real, sis, to how this girl looks with an hour of like work and modifications done to an image online. So it's just not fair. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's fair to the women who are their true authentic selves, right? But this is where I have grace. I have grace because if you're inundated with these things all day, all the time, it's super easy. It's super easy to again compare your real image to the false image of other women, right? So that's never lost on me. I don't have this thing to where like I can't understand where girls are coming from, like when they talk about pressure or they talk about, you know, having to look a certain way. Like it's pressure on that. But I want you ladies to know that you should take peace and solace in the fact that those women don't look like that for real. Like it's all cap, bro. Like, you know, they don't look like that. And even the ones who do, who may have a nice body or a nice face, they're still not perfect. There's still some like blemish. There's still gonna be some imperfection. Like, you know, I knew this girl in college who modeled, and she was a gorgeous girl, man, but she had like 6 fingers, bro. Like, this shit looked creepy, you know. And she had really big hands. Like, she had, like, her hands looked like a baseball mitt. And that's not me roasting her or, like, trying to, like, you know, joke on her. But I'm saying, like, to the seeing eye, right? She was, like, perfection. Like, East African girl, tall, curvy, like, slim still. But, you know, everybody, I said that not to put her down or roast her. But I said that to say that, you know, everybody got their flaws, bro. You know, as funny and as, you know, charming and hilarious and insightful as I am, bro, I have my flaws too, you know. I got my issues about me too, you know what I'm saying? You know, I'm pretty close to amazing, but you know, I got my things that I can improve on too, man. But I be feeling for girls who have to like really just deal with that pressure all the time, man. And you know, especially girls in school, man. Like, you know, teenagers could be cruel. So, you know, if you, Lord forbid, if you have a few extra pounds, or if you don't look like, you know, the it girl in Hollywood or like in music right now, you know, it's tough, you know. It's really tough. So my heart goes out to, like, you know, women who have to deal with that or battle that or feel like they have to look different physically in order to get love, you know, because that's not what it is. And if it's that, I want you to know that that's not real love. That's not genuine, you know. You always want the love that you receive or the love that you pursue. You always want it to be real. You always want it to be a genuine thing. And if someone is interested in you or not interested in you solely off of how you look aesthetically, right, then you have to do some work yourself and try to fix some things, you know. But yeah, man, you know, it's important for women to have that like that self-confidence, you know. It's super important for women to have that, for women and girls to have that self-confidence, because I think it's okay to admire someone else's beauty. Like, I'm not telling y'all to be haters or to, you know, become mean girls or anything like that, but I think it's important, man, that you learn how to appreciate the beauty of others, but still have a healthy respect for who you are and your beauty also. You know, because you out and about and you see a super bad bitch, right? That don't mean you're not a bad bitch too in your own right. You may not be as bad as her. I ain't even gonna lie to you there. That'll be some sucker shit if I told you that. You know, but you know, there's things about you that's dope as well, you know, and you have to appreciate those things and love those things, you know, as is, you know. You don't have to try to put yourself in a space or in a category to where, you know, you have to tear somebody else down because of this or that. But don't tear yourself down either. Like, don't beat yourself up because you may feel like, you know, somebody else is this or that. But, you know, the last thing I want to say, right, because there's this false belief that men don't like regular everyday women. That is the biggest lie on God's green earth. Do not think you have to be an IG model in order to attract a man, right? You can attract a man in this world by just being you. Now, the thing about it is this, and I talked about this a little bit at my last episode. A lot of times, women will come online and they'll say, you know, there's no good men or there's no good men available. The thing about it that I said was, and I got a lot of kickback on this, and I love the conversations that we're having, right? But I said, you know, it's not that there aren't good men available. The good men who are available, women just aren't attracted to. So so when you hear women say there's no good men available, that's an incomplete statement. What they really meant to say was, there's no good men available that I find sexually attractive. And as a result, I'm going to just say there's no good men, right? Which we know isn't true. So, ladies, when y'all say things like, you know, guys don't want regular women, no, that's not true. Again, the guys, ask yourself, do the type of guy you go for like the type of woman you are, right? And if the answer is no, then you know what you have to do. You got to alter your thing or whatever. Or, you know, do what you have to do to, I guess, attract the type of person that you like. I don't really recommend that, but if you like a guy who likes a certain type of girl and you're not that, you know, if you want that guy that bad, you have to do what you have to do. You have to compete. You have to compete. But if you want a guy on your level who likes you for you, then those guys are out there, and they're out there by the buckets. So don't listen to anyone who tells you something different than that. So that's all I got, man. I know, fellas, y'all had to sit through that, but I had to go ahead and get this one out. And yeah, that's all I got, man. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the CJ Wilkins YouTube channel. Also to the Be a Man Podcast Conglomerate. And I'm out. Peace.